Hey guys, we are back again. For those of you catching this video, you may have seen an old deleted video. We're gonna start fresh. We're going again, technical difficulties, so welcome back. For those of you that hadn't seen the other video, it's all good, we're here. Welcome. So I wanted to introduce you guys today to one of my great friends. Poirier is a great friend of mine. He has shared the bill on many stages with John Maxwell, Deepak Chopra, Stephen Covey. He is a multiple TEDx speaker, and he is a former stand-up comedian, and he has a wealth of knowledge. You guys, this guy is so amazing. I've been studying with him for the past at least 6 months in his courses, and I'm really excited to have him here with me today. I wanted him to share, like, he teaches on so many things, and one thing that I wanted him to kind of share with my network today, which I thought was really fun and special for anyone that wants to learn, is I wanted to share how to storytell. So I'm going to let him take it away. I'm going to bring him on, and we're going to let him kind of share his knowledge. And I want to... And we're
back! That was fun and interesting. Awesome. Love
so
it.
Get to
Technology.
Repeat everything we did earlier.
Absolutely. Well, you know what, though? That's technology, right? I mean, I believe everything happens for a reason. Yeah. So this is meant to be a better video than that one was going to be.
Sure. We'll take it. We'll take it, right? We'll take that. So I just wanted to share with everybody that Corey and we've been friends for well over a decade. I knew him back in the day when he was, he's an author and he's written many books. And he actually has a book there today that I'm actually in one of his books.
Yeah, well, and we talked about this on the first go round, is that I didn't have anything to prop up my phone today. So I'm using the actual book that you were in, Amy, which is, I mean, it's an older book of mine. You can see I still had hair back then. And even I was a little bit bigger back then. But yeah, it's a book where we featured some Atlantic Canadians, specifically Nova Scotians. And there is Amy, I guess it was maiden name? I got the maiden name, yeah. And so that's become my book prop today, which means I get good energy from the book.
Yeah, my maiden name was Amy Kerr, if you ever want to search me up. That's where it all comes from. But yeah, I was saying how I was propping him up on a toilet paper or a paper towel roll. That's where I'm propping my phone. My friend Brian actually gave me a tripod, and I'm so technological. I'm all over the place, never know technology, and I fail to use the gift that he's given me. I'm using a paper towel roll. So sorry, Brian.
Well, clearly I'm not much better. So so you have my sympathy for sure.
There you go. So I just wanted to share with you. I wanted to let everybody know, what I've been doing with you. Like, we've been taking your courses and studying and learning. And I gave a little bit of background on, who you are, what you did. Feel free to share more of your story if you'd like. And we wanted to tell people today, like, we wanted to share people. You train on many things, but I thought training people today that are interested, especially those in network marketing or business or sales, the act of storytelling is a really great tool to have in your back pocket. And there's many forms and many ways to storytell, and you are going to share some of that today. So I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Amy. And yeah, I mean, I won't go too far. I don't have to go too far into my background. In some ways, some of it probably comes out as I'm sharing. But one big part of my background that relates to storytelling is the years I spent in the stand-up comedy club trenches. You learn a lot about storytelling in that world. But also, and this is something that I've been doing, I've now been obsessed with interviewing people. And so we're well over 5,000 one-on-one interviews. And there's a couple of things there. One, I'm trying to learn the secret insights of the top performers. And that relates to speaking, communication, and also business. At the same time, what's really wild about that is every time I'm learning from that person, after that, I'm sharing their story. So I get to see what resonates and why stories, why stories pull me in, and the ones that don't pull me in, why they didn't and don't. And so I have a lot of years of learning about storytelling because I've been sharing stories for so long. It's a real big part of what I do.
What are some cool names that you want to throw out there that you've interviewed?
Okay, so One name I say, it's funny because I don't know how many people in your tribe or community are in Western Canada, but he's not as loved in Western Canada, but he's loved everywhere else. So I'll throw the name out. Is Dr. David Suzuki. So he'd be one. He's one of those people, know your audience. So in Western Canada, because of the oil thing and stuff, he's not as liked there, but still really interesting figure to interview. If we talk Canadian, Rick Hansen's another one. Arlene Dickinson, so Dragon's Den. The fans of Dragon's Den will know who Arlene is. But then if we talk kind of global scale, it's all over the place. Like it's Jake the Snake. If anybody remembers from the 80s wrestling, Jake the Snake Roberts. Jack Canfield, who I know you're familiar with, Chicken Soup for the Soul would be Jack's biggest. Everybody knows him from. If you say Jack Canfield, a lot of people know him. But if you add Chicken Soup for the Soul, everybody knows that book series. Also, Tony Horton. When I mention him, a lot of people dig Tony Horton, the P90X guy. Also, Sean T, who's in the same world, so Hip Hop Abs. And then if I finish the trifecta of the Beachbody people, Shalene Johnson, so Turbo Jam. So it's really all over the map. And as you know, I'm working right now on a documentary, which is bringing me to a whole new group of people. And so within that realm, Jack Canfield's going to be involved, but also John Gray. So he's the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus guy. A lot of people know who John is. JJ Virgin, who wrote the High Sugar Impact or No Sugar Impact diet book. So a lot of Robin Sharma's another big one that wrote The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. So a lot of really cool and exciting people.
Cool, so fun.
So I took a bit of a digression there. If we talk in the communication side, Lisa Nichols, who I know you know, who I talk about her often, but Lisa Nichols, who is in The Secret and co-wrote The Chicken Soup for the African American Soul. She's in what's that called? Mind. What's the name? Mind Valley. She's one of their key teachers. So Lisa's another one. So having done those interviews, what it really does is it teaches me about the power of story. Because I watch some people, they'll come on the show, and I'm not going to name names for this area, but I'll say they come on the show and they tell stories, and it just doesn't pull me in. And because I've been doing this a long time, it's not to say that I know how a story works better than the next person or what resonates with me, but I can tell you the difference between when somebody comes in and bang, their story pulls me in from the first second and never lets me go. And so what I'd like to share today is some little secrets behind the scenes stuff that's happening that people don't realize is happening. And I think that would serve your community best.
Sure.
So that's what I'm planning to do, if that's cool, Amy.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Cool. So what I'm going to share, because I want to share with you guys what I think in a matter of 8 to 10 minutes is going to be the highest level stuff I can share that you're going to get the most from. So I want to share a thing, first of all, called the DIP, D-I-P, DIP method. And just backstory, where I learned it was from the world of media. So I had people in the media, when I was approaching them, I had one person actually tell me, look, if you approached us using a DIP method, you would get more bookings. You would get more media bookings. And then I started to learn that this DIP method applies to speaking, it applies to communication, applies to interviewing, all those kind of things. But also for those of you that are sitting with customers on a regular basis and in a sales role, it also applies there too. So here's the quick version of what a DIP method is. I drew it up for the last video we did, so I'll just use the same drawing. My drawing and writing is horrible. okay to keep going? Because I think I read that the broadcast was interrupted for a second. I'm okay? All right. Okay, so I think people told me they just didn't hear the dip method, so I'm going to repeat that just in case. So I mentioned that in our earlier one that the dip method, I shared that this is what I kind of drew, my horrible drawing and horrible writing, but it tells you a little bit about the method. So the dip method, which is a method of storytelling that is very effective. And so if you see up there, I have credibility. That's the kind of the start where you're starting your dip. The down below the dip here itself is when you share the messy part of your story that people most resonate with. And up here is when you've come back out of your dip. And so what does this mean in real time? If I use Amy's story as the example, the credibility could be she's the millionaire in a bathrobe. And so that's the credibility, because you hear that, you go, wow. And especially in the industry, in the network marketing industry, wow, I can listen to this person because look what they've been able to achieve. So that's the start. And Amy may or may not share that. It might be somebody sharing her bio that shares it. But, and I'm going to talk about this in the scope of storytelling and speaking, but then I want to tie it to sales as well, how you would use it in sales. But in the storytelling world, if you're telling your story, the first part is to get the credibility. That's the start of your dip, and that's where you're still high. But then what you do is then you work backward and say, but it wasn't always this way. So let me tell you about the crap that I faced. And so in Amy's story, if I use that example, since a lot of in her community will know it, that's when Amy tells you about, here's the different network marketing companies I tried and struggled with. I tried this amount of companies, didn't have the success I was hoping. My husband said, we need to stop and get off this roller coaster. So that's the dip and the messy middle. And I feel, and Amy would probably confirm this, that people resonate with that part of her story in a big way. And so that's the messy middle of your dip. And then the last part is, and again, going back to my little horrible drawing here, the last part is when you're coming out of your dip. So up here, it's basically, that's when you start sharing, here's the life lessons I learned. So Amy could say, today I might be a millionaire in a bathrobe and created $1 million empire from my bathrobe. It wasn't always this way. Let me tell you about the struggles. And then the struggles are the down part of her dip. And then the next part is her coming out of it. She could say, but once I finally achieved success with a company, here's some of the things I learned about achieving success in that way. And then now what she's doing is telling you, here's what I learned on the way out of my dip. And then the last part is her teaching you those maybe 3 lessons she learned by being in that crappy spot and then coming out of it. So if you think about that, if now, and I'm using you as the example, if that's okay, Amy, but if Amy was the example, then if she's pitching to the media, she might say in the, and I'm just talking, I'm doing this on the fly, so I'm not planning any of this, but she might say how I went from almost, and I'm just using this as an example, Amy, but how I went from almost selling my house to becoming a millionaire in a bathrobe or something. So it's basically how I went from here to here. What you're doing is you're telling them your dip. Here's where I am at the top. Here's where I was at the low. And then in that press release or whatever you send to the media, you're going to say, Amy is this, this, and this today, but here's what she went through to get there. So I'm giving you the example of what a dip is, but now think about that from your own perspective. If you're watching this and you're sitting across from somebody that you're talking to about your network marketing company. So you're sitting across from them, and it could be anything. You could be a realtor and you're at an open house, but you're sitting across from somebody, and now think about what is your dip. So your dip could be, I joined this company because of this, this, and this. And since I joined this company, here's the successes I've had. But more importantly, I want to tell you about the struggles I faced. Why I got called this company. So maybe for some people, if they go to a company that's related to health and wellness, maybe the struggle was they actually were afflicted with a disease that they thought they couldn't find a cure for or an answer for. And then let's say, I'm just using an example, if that's cool, Amy, but let's say it was a supplement company and they took that supplement, and at least for them, it basically, I know somebody from years ago who joined a network marketing company and he had MS. And at least that company for him, when he started taking MS, he started walking again. He started being able to speak again. And his only thing that you could notice that he had MS was he had a little bit of problems with one of his vision from a person that was in a wheelchair and said would never walk again. And so you think about, for him, think about what his dip was, right? The struggles he had with MS, et cetera, et cetera. But then think about the passion now he has for this company, because he can say, here's what this company did for me. Here's the lessons I learned about how I could overcome MS and what it could do for me. And then he started learning about the cellular level of healing and stuff like that. So my point is that could be his dip. So think about what is the thing that drew you to network marketing. And the truth is within that is probably your dip. You know, maybe you were struggling to make ends meet that next month. So that's maybe what drew you. But the fact that you were struggling to make ends meet, people want to hear that because maybe that's where they're at right now. So this is the power of using the dip for storytelling. And again, you can hopefully see where I'm saying you can use it in sales. So, and if Amy's with you, or you're on online and Amy's saying, I want to introduce you to so-and-so in my downline, then you might say, Amy might say, you know, here's where she is today. She's crushing it. And then she might pass it over to you and you might say, thanks so much, Amy. It's hard to believe that I'm there today. But you know yourself, it wasn't always this way. So let me tell you guys a little bit about what my life looked like before this. And that's you going into your dip. And then you might say, but what I've learned on the way out of my dip, or how, and you're not gonna say those words, but what I learned on the way out of that, those challenging areas I was in, was this, this, and this. And that's why I'm so passionate about this company now. And I'd love to teach you how to do the same things. Nice. So hopefully people can see by me taking you through it a few different ways. That's the dip method of storytelling. The media uses it without telling you they're using it. Some of the world's top speakers, I mentioned Lisa Nichols. Go watch a Lisa Nichols talk right now, a video, and you'll see this dip that I just shared with you from a mile away now that you know what it is. So I found the top speakers are willing to share the messy middle of their story. Most other people that don't are the ones that struggle getting an audience of raving fans. So whether you're selling or whether you're story selling, you know, either or, that's how you get raving fans. Now, you know, I don't want to keep us a long time because I know with Facebook Lives, we're all busy and we don't have a whole lot of time, but I want to give you guys a few more nuggets outside of the dip. But I think honestly, and hopefully you feel the same, Amy, but if people take away that dip and sit down after we're done here and draw out their dip and say, you know, where am I today? What's my credibility? Why would somebody listen to me? That's the start of their dip. And then, and you've been through this exercise twice, even in our classes, but then right in the bottom, what is my messy middle? Where have I struggled? Why should people listen to me? What are the challenges I faced? And then the last part is, right, what are the things I learned that I can teach other people? And that right there is your dip. And you can frame any story that you share around it. So then, if we talk about other stories and other little nuggets, the other thing which I share all the time, and I think people forget this, is as storytellers and people who've been conditioned to learn through story, whether we realize it or not, within almost every story that resonates with us, there's a person that we can cheer for or a thing we can cheer for, and a person or a thing that we can throw rocks at. So that's the obstacle, right? So what I'm getting at is all great stories have a hero and a villain. And the hero and a villain can be a person, or it doesn't have to be a person. So your hero in a story could be a previous client. So maybe you're talking to somebody and they say, well, I don't know if I should join your company because I had this experience in the past. Or I don't know if I should join this company because here's my situation. So maybe the hero is another client that was in the same situation a month ago. So you might say, it's interesting you say that, and I totally get it. We actually had a client that just 2 months ago was scared to take this jump, and here's why. And of course, you're not going to say their name, and the story has to be true, but I'm sure over time you built those stories. So you might say they had the exact same situation you're talking about, and it was a struggle for them to finally pull the trigger and make this move, but then they finally did, and here's what they discovered. So if you can see there, so the villain is the struggle. They're saying, here's their we'll call it their objection. The objection is the villain. Here's why I'm struggling with making this decision. So that's the villain. The hero is a previous client who had the same situation, or customer, and here's where they are now. So what I want you to think about is, who are the heroes and villains in your stories? And so again, it doesn't have to be a person, but it can be. So this could be like I just shared that way, where you want to have the villain is the situation that the person says, I can't do it because, and the hero is another person that did achieve it. And that's why we know you can too. You could be the hero. I felt the same way when I started. I had the same, obstacles, what have you. And but here's what I found. So you could be the hero. But what I want you to think about is, in the stories you share, whether it's a 2-minute or a 30-second story, or whether it's a full talk, make sure that you have something that people can cheer for and something they can throw rocks at. And really, if you think about hope, like you think about, when you think about things like ALS, when you think about the Ice Bucket Challenge, well, ALS, or what that does to a person, their body, was the villain. And the Ice Bucket Challenge, the people that were raising money and awareness, they were the heroes. And of course, people that are afflicted with ALS. But my point is, you can see where there's a clear, basically, hero and a villain, and an obstacle. And so what I'm getting at is, we learn this way, and I could go for hours and show you example after example. Star Wars. Go watch the movie Star Wars, and you'll see this in real time. You know, Luke Skywalker is the clear hero. Darth Vader is the villain. The Empire and what they want is the obstacle. And if this is working in TV and movies and screenplays and sales and every other walk of life, I think you need to make sure even in your short little 30-second stories, you have a hero and a villain. That's my second tip. And because Amy knows I like delivering in threes, I'm going to share with you guys a few little extra nuggets as part of the third thing I want to share in storytelling. This is really quick and easy. At TEDx Talks, I love helping people land their TEDx talk. You know, my TEDx Talks changed my life and changed the game for me. And so one of the things I will tell you that you'll notice in almost all TEDx Talks is A, they work in threes, but B, there's always some common elements in every TEDx Talk. So I'm going to share with you the common elements that are in most TEDx Talks that relate to storytelling. So first of all is universal. So usually the story is universal, the message is universal, it's something people can relate to, whether they're telling a story within their talk or whether their whole story is a signature talk. So universal is one. Humor. Most of them find a way to add humor, and they know not to add humor if they have to test it. You'll notice that when they share humor, they're confident in that delivery because they've tested it, because humor can be risky. But if you can work humor into your stories, super powerful. Amy, you know the story of my stand-up comedy club thing that I share, and that story pretty much always resonates with people. Another one, I said I'll work in three, so I'll give you one more, would be engaging. And when I say engaging, your story should be engaging, obviously, but how do you actually engage the audience within the story? And you can do this sitting across from one person or on a stage, but basically you ask questions. So you say, how many people here have ever heard about this if it's in front of an audience? How many people here have ever struggled with this? Show of hands, because that's getting them to move and have their engagement. Well, you could sit across from somebody and say, you know, I know you're having a challenge with trying to make this decision. Have you ever struggled with this? Or have you ever had this situation? And that's the engagement within the story. So in my stand-up comedy story, I tell the story of me bombing horribly on a stage, and the engagement is how many people here, if I could get you a gig tonight at a Yuck Yucks club or a comedy club somewhere, would jump on the stage. So that's me engaging you into my story, because now you're putting yourself in my shoes within the story and saying, would I do that? Mm-hmm. So again, think about when you're sharing stories, are you finding a way to make them universal? Are they engaging? Are you asking questions, pulling people in? Are you adding a humor element? And in a perfect world, making sure you mix these up and do all of them within your stories. Mm-hmm. So, Amy, if I'm watching my clock correctly, I know we restarted, so I hope I'm right. But if I'm watching my clock correctly, I think we're about 10 to 12 minutes, 15 at the most. So that's in a nutshell on the storytelling side. I want to deliver three things, and I delivered them in three. I delivered three things, and then the last one I delivered in threes. So that's storytelling. You know, the high level stuff I can share with people in that short amount of time, even though we could chat, as you know, for days on this. But that's the high level stuff. Any questions on that, Amy, let me know. And hopefully that's what you were hoping for your audience.
Oh, absolutely. I think you did amazing. I think a lot of people watching this, if they're in our, you know, our team, our business, or other teams, other businesses, I think that, you know, this is great nuggets that people could use for their business or, you know, whatever it is that they're doing. So I have a bunch of questions here. I can see. I'm going to read them to you, and we'll do a quick Q&A before you wrap it up there. So a couple questions I see is, Victoria says, could you say what I've learned throughout my journey is that a great segue to say to get it come out of your dip?
Absolutely. So there's as much as our personalities are different, there's all kinds of ways you can come out of your dip. And I think you have to go with what your gut says feels best for you. But to answer the question, absolutely, that's something that will work. And it also is something that the audience will appreciate, because they're in their head, they're listening to your journey and thinking about their journey. Yeah. So it's a way to resonate with them. So the word journey is a great word to actually pull them out of their dip. So my answer is yes, but I also want people that are maybe asking that and saying, okay, do I have to say that? Also to know you can come out however you want to come out. But the big thing is you don't say, you know, now that I'm out of my dip. So make sure you don't, what do they say? The fourth wall, and Amy, in improv, yeah. Don't reveal the fourth wall. So yeah, I would say what I learned in my journey, or along my journey, here's what I discovered, and I'd love to share with you stuff that you can use on your journey. You know, so you can see now how you've tied it to, it's now about me and also us. So yeah, so that was a long answer to say yes. The answer is yes, Veronica.
Perfect. Okay, so Tasha says, what if you're falling into your dip at the moment?
So there's a couple of ways I would answer that. It's a great question. And so there's a couple things. One, you might have multiple dips. So on one hand, if you're wanting to share stuff and you feel you're maybe too, because there's two answers to this, but you might be too tied to your dip. We always talk about having time removed. And I know, Amy, at the last event you're at, most people said it's definitely a lot easier when you have some time removed from being in it. So one option is, if you look and see if you have other dips, you could share another dip and teach people with that one while you're learning from this one. What I would say, though, is the cool part is learning that you're in your dip and knowing that exists right now. You're already further ahead than 90% of the world. So what I would say is take notes in your dip, because your dip is probably going to be your best story. All your dips are your best stories. I mean, think about your story, Amy, about being in all those network marketing companies. Every time I've heard you introduce yourself, you've added that in. It's like within our groups.
You know what's funny is that to quote you a little earlier, when you said your most embarrassing part, your lowest part is your dip. And when I started getting success with Monat, I remember when I was talking to one of my mentors, Ray Higdon, I only shared with him at the time. I was like, this is who I am now, and this is what I've done. And then I shared I was so embarrassed to let him know, and I didn't want to even let my team know. When I first started in Monat, people didn't know that I was in network marketing before, because I didn't want to talk about it. I was a failure. I didn't want to think I failed and that I was not a good leader. I hid it. And it was actually Ray Higdon that encouraged me. He's like, you need to share that. And I was like, but I'm so embarrassed. It was embarrassing to have failed so many times and I was so embarrassed of it. And he is the one that encouraged me. He goes, that is the part you need to share. And so that I started sharing that. That's part of my story now, is that I failed, 17 years of suck, 10 different companies. I was a huge failure. And now I'm proud of it, because, it makes being more successful be even more exciting, and people root for you even more because they relate to that. Because a lot of people are in their suck right now. They're in their failures. They're going through that. And they want to see, okay, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Because if it's always sunshine and rainbows, people can't really relate to it. They're like, well, glad for you that it's sunshine and rainbows, but for me, I'm over here struggling. So I had that epiphany came, and I have to give credit to Ray, is the one that said, you need to celebrate your dip. I didn't know it was a dip at the time until you told me this is what it is. He was telling me to celebrate that dip. And so it all came around twofold. It's funny.
Well, and Amy, I guess to sort of circle back and answer that question in one other way too, about what if you're in your dip right now, the other side. So I said one option is to search for another dip and teach people based on that one. So for example, let's say if it's network marketing you're in and you're just starting. So, and that's the challenge. How do you tell somebody else how well you're doing if you're maybe a week in? That's the hardest time, right? When you're brand new in it. So the one option is you can talk about your other life, your other side of your life, which brought you into this. I mean, for some people, maybe they're offering products like, say, Monat, and then maybe they were a hairstylist for 1,000 years. That's still a success in the same industry. They understand what works with healthy hair and what have you. So that's one side. So to figure out what your other dip is that you can bring in until you get out of the dip on this one. The other option is, and I think, I think it was Jerry D, the comic, who said this, but I might be wrong. But he said when he was teaching, he said one thing he learned is all he had to be is one chapter ahead of his students. And so, if he's and he said when he got into school and as a teacher, he was on chapter 7 telling them to read chapter 6. So the other side is, if you're in your dip, then maybe you want to resonate with and find raving fans that are they're further behind in their dip. They're just starting this fall, and you're maybe just starting to be on your way out. So I would say there's different options there. But the one thing I will say, and this is maybe an unpopular way to say it, is I would stay away from pretending you're way further out of your dip if you're not. So, and we talked about this, I think, at my event as well, about there's some people that will say, I'm going to teach you how to become a millionaire who've never been a millionaire. So I would caution you to that, because sadly, the bottom line is it'll probably eventually get found out. And it'll hurt you, and it'll hurt credibility more than anything. So what I would say is, if you're in your dip, go for people that you're further along, but then you can still say to them, I totally get it. I still struggle every day. We see people at the highest of levels that say, I still struggle every day. And, and we still resonate with that. So even if you're only a little bit further than them, I totally know where you're coming from, because I was just there. So you can talk about being further along in the dip. So hopefully that answers the question with a couple of different options. A, you might have another dip that you can use until this one gets a little further along. B, just be further along than other people. But what I will say is take notes, because I promise you, if you truly are in your major dip right now, it's going to be the thing that basically helps you impact more lives in the future, reach more people, and have more success.
Would it be accurate to say, I had a thought while you were talking, like if you're talking about you being in your dip right now, can you relate to people by saying, I'm struggling every day, but what I'm learning right now is this, and almost like bring them into your dip with you. Like I'm in the dip too. I'm learning this, and they'll be like, oh, sweet. And they might listen to what you're doing. So you're almost like bringing them on the journey to get out of the dip together in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. And I would even say, and you're in the perfect business model for that to be the case, is let's get out of the dip together. But at the same time, it's obviously ideal if you're a little further along, even if it's that much. But to your point, yeah, absolutely, Amy, and we, the people that aren't even still in their dip in that area will still say, I totally get it, because, like, for example, productivity. Let's use that as the example. You could be teaching people how to be more productive, and you're struggling yourself, and telling people, look, I get why you're struggling, because I may be a little bit further along, but I still struggle and drop the ball. Every now and then I fall back into my old patterns and run late to meetings. Like, what I'm getting at is, so you can say, let's do it together and bring them along. You don't have to be out of the dip to help them out of the dip. And I think as buddies, as a buddy system, getting out of the dip, it also works. And so I think you're right. It all just depends on how you word it. But like, you can say, I get it. I'm still there too. That's why I can teach you some of the things I've just learned. And, let's make our way out of this together.
Yeah. Cool. I love it. So Victoria says, is it true that people want to rally for the underdog?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think, you could ask yourself, Victoria, do you root for the underdog? And you probably do. Amy, I don't know if you do, but I of course I root for the underdog. Like Dave versus Goliath. You go back to a story like that, and who were we cheering for? We weren't cheering for Goliath. But actually, a mutual friend of ours, I think you mentioned he's a friend, is Dave Carroll. Another Dave versus Goliath, who wrote a song called United Break Guitars about United Airlines breaking his guitar. That went viral. Why? Because we were rooting for the underdog, who is certainly Dave, versus the machine, the man or woman, the big, like when we say it was Dave against the man or woman. So the answer is yes. I think by nature, we almost always root for the underdog. So much so that sometimes people want to see the person that's achieving and succeeding topple because they want to root for an underdog. And I like maybe even to our own, we might see somebody who's actually impacting lives in a good way, and we're still like, he's not an underdog anymore like us. And so, and so I think we root more for the underdog than anybody.
True. So Tasha made a comment. She says, I feel I'm the hero and the villain. I'm my own worst enemy, she says.
Well, and that happens. I mean, you heard a great example of it. I shared a story about Kelly Woodhouse, who is a burn victim, who's in our program, but she was a burn victim at the age of 2. And so Kelly, there's a documentary on her life called Still Beautiful. And I asked Kelly, in the documentary, who do you think the villain is, Kelly? And I was just curious to see because she was burned by fire. So, and Amy, you remember this? I asked this question at our event. And so I think the natural answer would be is the fire would be the villain in Kelly's story. That's how she got burned, and that's what changed her life. But I wanted to hear from Kelly because it's her life, so she know who her villain is. And I was wondering, who did they write the villain as in the documentary, even if they didn't intend to? But obviously, you still write in a villain. And she said, which I thought was really profound, which goes back and talks about can we be the villain and the hero, is she said she believed the villain was the self-talk in her head that stops her. Her latest TEDx talk, she talks about the 3 different types of Kellys. And one of them is a self-sabotage Kelly. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that Kelly's the villain. And you might not even say, I think it was Tasha that said that. Am I right? Or was it Tasha?
Yeah, Tasha said it, yeah.
Okay, so Tasha, it might not be that you're the villain and the hero. It might be the self-talk is the villain and you're the hero. And that's what it was with Kelly. But basically she said, I sabotage myself sometimes when I'm enjoying success. Or I beat myself up when, somebody says, says something to me, I start thinking I'm not beautiful. And then she has to get back into that frame of mind where she realizes she is. So I know it was just a comment, but just to add on to that, I think most of us struggle with that same villain. We have that self-talk. Even the ones of us, maybe myself, who've done positive deposits. I call them posits. That's my own kind of word I think I coined. But posits that every day, I'm making these positive deposits into my life. And I still have days where I'm still doing the negative self-talk. now we're back into the dip, right? I'm still in my dip sometimes. Like you can see how it's like an enigma within. Now I'm within the story of the dip. But the truth is, yeah, I still struggle with that. 100% truthful. I still struggle with sometimes the negative self-talk. And you know what? The difference is now I catch it quick and I reframe it quick. But it still exists. So what I would say, Tasha, is the good news is there's light at the end of that tunnel. But I think the other side is realize that most of us struggle with that. And if you can recognize the self-talk as the villain and it's a separate thing from you, then it makes it a lot easier to overcome that villain.
I love that. That is so good. That's why he
Truthful.
does what he does. He's good. So do you guys have any more questions for Corey? Because he's going to wrap it up. So if you have any questions, if you're catching the replay and you have a question, just tag his name. If you have a question for him, he'll be happy to, talk to you and answer. So yeah, other than that, if there's no questions, then we can just wrap it up, whatever you want to say.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd love to say, Amy, thanks to you for making this possible. As you know, I admire the work you're doing. I can't wait to see your brand fully get out there into the world, and I know it's going to impact a lot of lives. I mean, you've personally already impacted a lot of lives, but now this brand's going to do it as well. Also thankful, we talk about, I talk a lot these days about synchronicity and the fact that, think about the dots that had to line up for you and I to meet way back then, me to profile you in the book. We also profiled you in my newspaper that I used to have too, profile you there, then to have that kind of dip where I traveled and moved across the country and everything else, and then for us to come full circle again. Yeah. And so think about all the things that had to happen there. So I'm grateful that those things all happened and they were meant to. And so the only thing I was going to do, if it's cool, Amy, is I was going to extend an offer to your group, and I can tell you that it's something I'm going to do. It's at the same time I'm actually doing this with the public, but your group's going to get a big time special out of this because it's you and because it's your team. But I'm also going to give something away for free as well, if that's cool. So the free part is if you guys want to learn more about communication, maybe you want to get on stages at some point, but I believe this will serve you even if it's in relation to building relationships or sales. You can grab a free copy of my book called The Book of Public Speaking. And the website couldn't get easier than it is. It's thebookofpublicspeaking.com. So free book, you go there, sign up, grab yourself a free book. That's I'd love to offer that no matter what. And then the other thing is if people are interested in going that next step, whether it's speaking on a stage or delivering a TEDx talk, that seems to be, when I talk to people, that's the passion area for most people now. Because what I've said to people, and I stand by this, there's very few things that will boost your credibility in any industry and draw more people to you than a TEDx talk right now. It's just the hot thing. And so what I've gotten passionate about doing is helping people communicate better, namely usually from a stage and getting in front of a bigger audience and leveraging that so that they don't have to run week to week anymore financially and can leverage the power of speaking and what that can do for somebody's life and income and also message because it's such a great platform. And then the second thing I'm passionate about now is helping people get on that red stage, that red and black TEDx talk stage. So I guess the offer, Amy, is that if there's people in your network or community that are interested in either A, getting on a TEDx stage and having their hand guided all the way through, and also, as you know, one of the things that I try to do for people in my community is offer them media opportunities, interview opportunities, tickets to live events, all that kind of stuff. So if somebody's looking to learn more about getting on a TEDx stage and be guided through the process, or the flip side is they just want to get on a stage and start speaking and maybe even get paid to do it, that's what I really spend a lot of time helping people with. So I would say the best way to do that is come to me and let me know that it's from Amy that you heard about this, and meaning from her Facebook Live page. And if you want to send me a message, is probably the easiest way. But either message me on Facebook because you have my, I'll actually post below so you guys can have my page. Reach out to me, add me as a friend.
Use the code word
reach
Amy.
out to me, but code word Amy. There you go. Yeah. So send me a message, put code word Amy. And if you're interested in at least learning more about what it would take to get on a stage, to speak, what our programs look like, send that to me. And basically, I'm going to give you the Amy special. And what I can tell you, I won't get into numbers, but I'll tell you that it's more than 50% off what the normal rate is right now. So that's a pretty big deal.
And I just want to make a disclaimer just off the top. I make nothing for this. If you join, whatever he is offering, whatever you're doing, I have nothing to do with it. I'm happy to share and connect people together. There's no money exchange, just so you know. I like to just share people with my network that I personally believe in and I'm actually a student of his, so I am doing it too, right? So I'm happy to just kind of share what I'm doing with everybody. So I just want to make that disclaimer off the top.
But you know, Amy, I mean, one of the things I so appreciate your integrity, and you know, so I love that that's who you are, and that's, I mean, that's at the end of the day, like I said, why else would I mean, I say, you know, we go to events and stuff, and you go to an event and they say, this is the only, you know, the price for those that are here, 50% off our regular price. And then a month later, you see that on the website, the exact same price you paid when you're told it was 50% off. Well, what I can tell you is we're relaunching the program this week to the public. In fact, today, the pricing will probably go up tomorrow on our website. So if people are doubting this, if you're wondering, you know, is this really that much of a difference? Reach out to me. I'll tell you the pricing for Amy's team. And when you go onto the website, the pricing probably tomorrow afternoon will be up, and you'll be able to see the difference. And that's literally, you'll see the sign up. So you'll know that's, if you want to sign up, you go click on that link, you'll see the price is almost double, or double basically. So if you want to know more about that, reach out to me. You can click on the Facebook page and profile, or you can send me an email at thatspeakerguy@gmail.com. As you probably can tell everybody, I'm really big on making it easy. So thatspeakerguy@gmail.com, or go on my Facebook page, or if you want the free book, thebookofpublicspeaking.com.
I love it.
I work hard to get these easy things to remember online.
I love it. And we can put the links up in the description after the video's done and stuff like that. We'll give you the links for sure. So thank you so much, Corey. You've been so valuable. I love all the little nuggets. I hope people enjoyed the nuggets as well. And yeah, thank you for everything you do. I appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you, Amy. And I want to add that regardless of what happens from this minute forward, I'm hoping that people that either join live or watch the replay, I'm hoping you hear something like that can transform your network marketing business or transform your communication. Whether we never talk again, my biggest thing is, as long as I can deliver some value to you at the time, that's what's important to me. Yeah. So if I never hear from you again, thank you so much for joining in. And otherwise, I'll be chatting with you in the near future.
All right, thanks, Corey. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Amy.
See you.